Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in live today for the next stop of our Eccles Alumni road trip. Today, we will be talking about real estate outlooks. We are always so thankful to our sponsor, CR England, for making this possible. We've had so many great discussions so far and are so excited for our discussion today. Our panel today will be moderated by Tommy Alquist, and I'm just going to give him a quick introduction before bringing everybody else on. Tommy Alquist is the CEO of Ball Ventures Alquist and can best be described as a visionary who gets things done. His work ethic, paired with his inherent ability to see opportunity and turn it into something tangible and profitable, has enabled him to practice a successful medical career as an emergency room physician, start and operate several successful companies, and run a campaign to serve as the governor of Idaho. In 2005, he started Alquist Development, a commercial development company. Under Tommy's leadership, Alquist Development developed and owned over 2 million square feet of office and retail space. Tommy's inspired projects have patently transformed a number of cities in Idaho. In 2018, Tommy partnered with Ball Ventures, one of the nation's most successful development and investment companies, to found BVA, Ball Ventures Alquist. BVA is a commercial development and strategic capital investment company that delivers excellence and value to tenants, investors, and partners. Because of the exceptional work done by BVA, the company tagline is Inspire Excellence. We are so honored to have Tommy joining us today and so excited to hear what the panel has to say about real estate outlook. So Tommy, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lancia, very much. It's an honor to be able to do this. Anytime we can do things as Utes together, it's great. I will tell you, we're still smarting a little bit up in Boise. As a lifelong Ute and undergraduate and medical school at the University of Utah, and now a huge Boise State Bronco fan, BYU's win last week was just painful. So we're still in mourning, and it's fun to do something and together with the Utes, and hopefully we can have a great season down there this year with it being shortened. But I'm really happy today with who we're going to be part of here. We have a great panel to discuss these real estate topics, and as everyone knows, things are changing so much during this pandemic. I think there's people that listen today will learn a lot from these folks. And so I'm going to introduce each one of them just briefly and invite them to turn on their screens now, and then let them take just a minute to tell us a little bit more about themselves. So first is a good friend. I've known him for years, Mike Chittister, currently with the Bristol Company and a Galena Opportunity Fund. But Mike is a longtime real estate guy that understands both the Salt Lake and the Boise market. So it'll be very good to hear from you today. Natasha Stevens is the Chief of Staff of PEG Company. When we started this, I kid her a little bit. She's down in Utah County now in Provo. So we all send our best wishes to you, and that you're down there full time, and good luck with that. And Tracy Vance, who's an attorney here with in-house counsel for Rocky Mountain Development, another one of the large development firms up in the Treasure Valley in Idaho in the Northwest, and have worked with Tracy for years too. So I think we have a great group. I would like to just give each of you a chance to just tell a little bit more about yourself, and before we get into some questions. Mike, let's start with you.
Okay, thanks, Tommy. Great to be here with everyone today. I began my development career in Salt Lake City with the Boyer Company. I worked in the medical real estate group. I did that for a number of years, and then I ended up here in the Boise area. Was hired to be over the real estate of a health system. So that's how I landed here. I did that for 7 years, and then in 2018, I wanted to get back into development, and so I now work doing some residential land developments, some still dabbling in medical. Also, I work with a company called the Galena Opportunity Fund, doing some multifamily development in the Northwest. So that's plenty for me.
Thanks, Natasha.
Hi, I'm Natasha, and I work at PEG Companies. Our headquarters are here in Utah County in Provo, but we have developments throughout the Intermountain West, and we have a big hotel portfolio across the country. So, we focus on multifamily, office space, medical office, and like I said, hospitality. And my background is in business development, so it's just gotten me on this path to commercial development.
Thank you, Natasha and Tracy Vance.
Thank you, Tommy. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in Utah with, I was undergrad accounting and got my degree there, and then in law school, also at the University of Utah. Spent a couple of years at Utah before moving back home to the Boise area. Worked at a boutique real estate firm here, Muehlman & Miller, and then I went in-house with Hawkins Companies, which is a national development company. And then the last 10 years I've been with Rocky Mountain Management and Development. Our emphasis, we do a lot of medical office, retail, hospitality. We have a couple hotels that we operate, and we're also getting back into the express car wash service. So I'm glad to be part of the panel and looking forward to everybody's comments.
Great, thank you. Well, we've got a couple of questions that were sent in advance for us, and so they're very good. And so if I'm going to start with those, and Mike, maybe you can take this first one for us. And the question is this: COVID obviously has disrupted lives and livelihoods in a lot of ways. It also, you hear from everyone, you hear, and I think pendulums swing one way and the other way, but everyone's saying, well, the future of work will not be the same. The future of how we office and how we interact with people. And I think there's kind of two sides to that. But the question is this: with COVID going on, both for the Utah and Idaho market, what do you see as office leases come to an end? What are the challenges that landlords may be facing and the office market may be facing? And what are some of the innovations that you're hearing out there in the new frontier post-COVID?
Sure. Had a conversation with a number of developers I really respect here, and a little while ago, and the main theme of the conversation was the unknown. No one knows quite exactly what's going to happen. I don't think here we've had as many significant issues as some larger cities in the Northwest in terms of office vacancies. The economy is still pretty good here, and so it hasn't been too catastrophic. We haven't felt it as much as others, but what I've heard a lot from brokers is that there are those who are renewing are largely staying in place. They are doing short-term renewals. They're, like everyone, hunkering down and trying to understand what comes next. And so you haven't seen a lot of people renewing and jumping into a new long-term lease. It's more hold and see. I do know of a few development projects that were slated to kick off, that office-wise, that I do think it is hurting some new development. I know one building, I think if you have good fundamentals, you're still okay, but I don't see a lot of spec and office are going up right now. And so it's slowing down new development deals, I think. Haven't seen too many catastrophic vacancies where companies just upped and moved, but so we're insulated, but there's just a lot of unknowns. I've heard in 1 week, I'll just tell one last thing. I heard in 1 week, two people I deeply respect, very good professionals, who said, one said, less office will be needed in the future because people will work from home. And the other person said, more office will be needed because the spaces will need to be larger for safety. And they could both be right. We don't know. And so I think that's still what everyone is dealing with.
Yeah, as a follow-up to that, I'll throw this out to the three of you, and one of you can take it. Is I know we've been looking into spaces that are more co-working spaces, and there's estimates that in the future that'll be 5 to 15 to 20% of office space will be more of the flexible space that folks can rent rooms. There's Kiln down in Utah County that we visited, Natasha, that you're probably more aware of down there. But any thoughts on how that space might look in the future for companies?
So I'll just speak from personal experience, like at the Kiln, my husband, his company had space at the Kiln and 2 other office spaces. So what they've done is kind of consolidate this space to one instead of having office leases throughout Utah. And so they're making it more flexible for people to come into the office. They want people, if they're comfortable, to come into the office. And I would say our strategy as a company is we see, cities that are more dense will probably have smaller office spaces because they can't accommodate the space for more square footage per employee. So their office leases will probably go down, but I think in our areas of Utah, Boise, Arizona, tertiary markets, we're assuming that we will see office space kind of expand because we have more space to grow and we can accommodate more employees.
Tracy, anything else to add to that?
Well, I'll touch on just a little bit of what the three of you have already talked about, and people I've talked to as well. It's just so unknown. They've talked about with the flex program, do we need as much office space? But then on the flip side of that, they talk about, well, when people are flexing, they need to have a place to be able to go into their office and workspace, and that workspace has to be socially distanced. So will cubicles start going by the wayside? Will office, not just saying office space, but just offices in general, will that start getting smaller? So you need to, instead of have cubicles, you need to have smaller office space, or are you going to have more conference room areas, smaller conference rooms, but more spread out, because then that'll be a place that people can come into the office and actually be able to work from. And then if we're still in this type of situation, what do we do with the children? And there's been a lot of talk on, will more offices be able to let children, be able to come in, and so because you're only coming in for a couple hours, that there might be a little daycare area or not conference rooms, et cetera, outside the children can come in and spend a couple hours, and then their parents, and then they take off and they go back home. So I agree with everybody with what everybody's saying, that it's kind of unknown. We just don't know what's going to be happening.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's great. I think I would add to this. We have probably in our portfolio in the Treasure Valley 6 or 7 large companies that were from California that moved up and took a lot of space from us. And they've all handled it a little differently. And so I think my answer to everyone would have been different in June than it would have been in August than it is now. And I think what we're hearing now from our tenants, because we try to stay really in close contact and try to meet their needs and understand what they're thinking, is that with a vaccine coming, and this, I think early on, people said, hey, it didn't affect our productivity too much. That was what we heard from everyone. Hey, this is great. And then about July, it went from, this is not great. I think that productivity, I think all the challenges you just brought up, Tracy, with kids and home office and everything else, I think we're hearing from our tenants that are large that, hey, we want to get back to work. It will be different, but everyone's anxious to get back. So we're actually hopeful. I think as a company, what we're doing is we're really exploring that kiln type space. I think that's really smart. And I think that you're going to have a mix, and every company is different. It depends on whether you have a company of largely software engineers or people that need to collaborate, or traditional attorneys' offices, medical office. So I think what we try to do in the industry is have an answer that's a one size fits all. And it just isn't the way it is in office. And it's going to need to have a lot of different product type and be experts in a lot of different things. So that was great answers. The next question that we got pre-event is a good one. And I do think it merits some discussion from this group. And I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. We have certainly seen just an exodus from big cities to Boise, whether that be Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle. It just seems like every day our phone's ringing off the hooks with people relocating. So we've also visited those locations in the last 6 months and talked to some of their brokerages, and you hear, and this is true, their listings are down, their rates are going down, and there's a big shift happening. How do you see that kind of settling out? What do you see for the Utah and Idaho market, and this trend of moving from these urban centers to places like Idaho and Utah? Any thoughts or feelings on that trend, or what you see happening? And that's for all three of you. Just go ahead and chime
in. I just finished. We just finished the development of a subdivision in Eagle. Eagle's sort of a higher income area in the Treasure Valley. These are larger lots, 2-acre lots, and it was fascinating to, we got to kind of know every buyer because it was just 17 lots, but half of them were from out of state, and just so many of them were able to work elsewhere. They had the ability to commute if they needed to, and they were just trying to get out of a high cost environment with high regulation. So that's the thing we've been hearing for a long time. I think it's just very real. And so I think we've benefited from that, and I don't see that stopping. We've actually seen an uptick in demand for that product. So I think the story for Idaho is just that is continuing to happen. I haven't seen it ebb yet, but it's really just people are leaving larger cities for different reasons, sometimes political, sometimes economic, sometimes way of life. And, this is a good spot.
That's great. Thank you. Natasha or Tracy, anything to add to that?
Well, I
I
was
would
at,
just say, oh, go ahead.
You go ahead, Natasha.
I would say that we're seeing that here in Utah. We're seeing, and personally, like businesses and, people just moving here because they feel like they're confined. And it seems it was driven also, politically, that they want to come to, a state that feels like they have a little bit more freedom for themselves and their children. So I think that impacts us. My personal fear is that it's driving up, the costs for locals, and it's getting hard for people who live in Utah who've been here for years to get into a home. I keep hearing brokers and agents tell us they're getting over 20 offers per house, and so it's making it difficult. I hope we see in the future that these companies will start relocate to Utah as well and provide jobs for locals and drive up the salaries so that we can see Utah residents get into these homes, and we're not just seeing people from out of state, which we welcome it and we're excited about it, and I think this helps change the dynamic of Utah, but I do think there is some locals who are being left behind.
What I was just going to mention was I was at Economic Summit last week, and a graph that they put up on the board was Idaho had the highest percentage of people coming into their state percentage-wise of any other state in the union. And I think Utah was on there too, but I wasn't actually looking for Utah, so I can't mention that. But we have a lot of the same issues that Natasha brings about because of everybody's coming in here from out of state. So I don't see that we're having a big problem because everybody from the bigger cities are trying to get into Boise because of the quality of life and the cost of living. It is hard for somebody that grew up in the area to be able to afford to be able to live here, but it's fairly easy for somebody out of state. And most of the properties that are being bought and sold residentially, they're not even going onto MLS, and like Natasha indicates, they're being sold at higher than that they're originally going on the market. I just had a friend of mine just last week. He put up a house on the market, and he got I think 3 immediate offers, one 10,000 over, and 2 others were 30,000 over the list price. And I mean, you question yourself. You're like, well, did I list it too low? Not really. There's just no supply in the market, and that is one of the reasons why Idaho is not going to be hurt from a landlord or developer's perspective, at least in the short term, I believe, is because we just do not have the supply, and the demand is much greater than the supply, but that is pushing up prices.
I think that's great. I do think we have time. One of the worries that I have, and I'd be really interested to hear what you have to say. It really has little to do with commercial real estate, which is the topic today, but I think we're both seeing this in Utah and in Idaho, where you are seeing the median house prices go through the roof, and there is no inventory. I mean, there's just story after story after story, and there are a lot of out-of-staters coming in. And so, what does that do to the need for the safety net and the social fabric of our communities? Because we talk a lot about kind of middle class folks being priced out, but we have a problem in the Treasure Valley with homelessness. In Nampa School District, we have over 1,500 homeless kids in one district. We're pricing people out that are in that ALICE group with asset limited, income constrained, but employed. So it's the working poor. And that gap is widening quickly in our communities. And so maybe we'll dive off topic just for a little bit and get your thoughts, because I know and respect you guys. Tell us what your thoughts are there, ways that we need to help as a community, things that we might be missing or not looking at as this divide widens right now, right before our eyes. And go ahead, just jump in, whoever wants to chime in first, but I'm sure you probably all three have something to say about this.
I mean, I would say as a multifamily developer, we understand the need for affordable housing. And, we've tried different ways to get into it. And, I'll just say quickly that we have a new fund strategy where we're converting extended stay hotels into multifamily, because as a developer with construction costs so high, we cannot build Class B apartments and make it pencil. So because these extended stay hotels are basically fourplexes and they already have the amenity space, they already have parking. The only thing we have to do is work with cities and zoning. So we are able to convert these extended stay hotels into Class B housing. And we say workforce housing. It's, housing for teachers and, firefighters and, people who are employed, but they just can't get in. And so, we've acquired a number of extended stay hotels that are in cities that have been built up around them. So cities like Atlanta, Sacramento, it would be impossible as a developer to go in and develop. So, we've tried for a number of years to consider, how can we get into the affordable housing without, relying on, tax incentives. So this is one strategy we've done as a developer, is try to be creative, especially in, we started this in 2018 and it was just timely that the pandemic hit. So, this is just our experiences. Unfortunately, with construction costs so high, we can't create housing. We can't create affordable housing. We can't make it work. So we've tried to create a new strategy and a new vehicle to bring into places throughout the country.
Natasha, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. What a way to innovate and try to help those folks that need it most. That's great. Thank you.
Natasha, that is great. I mean, I'm not going to be able to come up with any solution here. I'm probably more on we do need to find a solution to the problem, because I've got kids, this year I'm just an empty nester. I've got 3 kids. One just graduated from college. One is in the military. One just started this semester for her first year. She's at the University of Utah. So another Ute in the family. And it's a scary proposition. How can my kids, how come I wasn't worried about when I got out of college, in the late 80s, I bought a HUD home for almost next to nothing in Utah. How can we get kids like my kids that just get done with college? Most of those kids have student loans. How can those folks that have a student loan be able to even qualify for a loan when the median income does not afford the median home in the area? So anything that we can possibly get, and in Idaho here, since we have such an influx of new people, we can't keep the building going up fast enough to be able to get affordable housing there, and the construction costs are high. But we have a lot of apartments coming up, but the people I've talked to, and even in the multifamily industry, they've signed leases with people before the apartments are going up, and they're happy when the person backs out of the lease, because now they can sign a new lease with a higher rent, because the rents have went up $300 a month. And so they're more than happy to let people out of the rent, because now it's even making a better return. So no solution here, but I realize that there's a problem. So I'd like to hear.
I would say I've been encouraged by a few developers who have fairly high profile projects, nice projects, that I think could be great market rate deals, have incorporated a LIHTC or a workforce housing component. There are financial, if you work on the financing, it's complicated, it takes some experience, it's not easy, but you can find some financing incentives that can make it easier to pencil. And so I've been encouraged partially just because I know a couple of local developers here who kind of have put that into their project. It's more complicated, but it was kind of the right thing to do. And they felt like it would be great to have, some workforce type housing, even low income housing, and some high profile projects in downtown Boise. So I think that's part of it. The other thing I would say is cities need to help create incentives for projects like that and help push them forward. And like, the extended stay hotel idea, those are always complicated from a city perspective, but if you have a motivated city that sees that picture, they can support as opposed to put up roadblocks. And so I think that's important as well.
That's great. I'll just add one other thing. One of the things that I saw traveling around Idaho is it's a big problem in populated areas, like we just discussed. To me, it's even almost a harder nut to crack in smaller communities, because you have population bases in these smaller towns of 10 to 15,000 people, and there is no housing. Like, you know, we talk about not having affordable housing in the larger cities, but in the smaller towns, because of construction costs and some other constraints, there's no housing. So we actually just started a nonprofit called Bringing Idaho Home at BVA. And in the coming years, we're going to actually just try to donate services and financially to get housing in small rural Idaho towns, just because a lot of times that's the constraint on the family. There's just no option. So anyway, it's a big topic, and I really appreciate your insight to this, because while it doesn't have anything to do with real commercial development, what I love about it is commercial developers and developers in general are usually very good problem solvers. They tackle things and they figure things out, and I think that mindset is going to be what's going to be needed, because it's not going to be the government that's going to figure this out for us, and shouldn't be, frankly. It's going to be innovative business leaders that care about their communities that get this figured out. So thank you very much for that. There's another topic that's a little off, but I think if anyone's listening to this today that might be of the younger generation, looking at us here, what inspired you to get into the business you're in, commercial real estate, commercial development? What advice would you give someone that was looking at this industry as maybe a potential profession that they wanted to get into? And just let's go through just down the line with Mike, Natasha, and Tracy to answer that, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
There are days I question if I made the right decision. No, I'm just joking. I love it because it is, you don't do one thing one day. It is, you have to be help in sales one day, you have to be strategic one day, you have to be finance one day, you have to have design and construction, and I think that's what's most challenging, but also most rewarding and most fun. There's a lot of different things you've got to do. I think, you know, you have to learn to be flexible. You have to learn to ride the good times and the bad times and expect them and not be surprised by them. And that's, for some, I've seen some folks that works for and others who don't. You know, it's sort of a risk tolerance thing. But that's, I think, what attracts me and what keeps me most interested. It's hard, but it's fun hard. If that makes sense.
I'm going to echo everything you just said, Mike. So I think number one is you just have to be very flexible. I mean, in real estate, we've all been told in school or when you're studying it that it's in cycles. So you have to be ready to ride the waves up and down. And I think important is you need to be smart when times are good. I think in real estate, it's really appealing because when things are good, you feel like you've earned it because all of your projects are, you know, have a 2 to 10 year timeline. So when you're doing well, I think it's human nature to feel like, you know, we've worked this hard, we've put 10 years into this, but it is a cycle. So you just have to be long-term thinking. You have to think outside of the 10-year, and, you know, you have to think like 15, 30 years down the road. And where do you want your projects to be? Where do you want your company to be? So that's what inspired me to get into real estate. Is it is not a short-term, you know, career. You're in it for the long haul, and, you know, you have to be willing to learn, and every project is dynamic and it's different. So I just like it because I know it will be up and down, but I'm committed.
And I don't know how much more I'll have to add to that, but what would you think about when you're trying to get into the real estate market? What kind of real estate practitioner would you want to be? Find a company or developer that is in that market if you want to get into multifamily, or if you want to get into the industrial market or hospitality. Find a way of getting your foot into the door to that company. Find a mentor in that company, and learn and sponge and be as curious as possible. And that's the only way your career will advance, is just trying to learn as much as possible, hit the ground running. Like everybody else has said, it's not a get rich quick scheme, but it is very satisfying with what you do. You will understand. I'm an attorney by trade. I was in private practice. I wasn't a litigator, but the nice thing about what I do is transactional work, and now I'm in-house. I don't view the people that I'm working with on the other side of the transaction. You know, if I'm a landlord and working with a tenant, or if I'm the developer and we're working with a build-to-suit client or something, we're trying to do a win-win situation. We're both trying to win in the transaction. We're not trying to win at all costs. This is a small community. You work with the people that you deal with on a daily basis. You see them down the road again and again. I've worked with Mike Chester on deals. I've worked with Tommy on deals, and hopefully I'll work with them again. So you're never trying to burn bridges. You're always trying to learn. It's flexible, and it's a dynamic industry, and one that I would highly recommend.
I think that was fantastic. Thank you, all of you. I think that was very, very, very good. You know, I probably had the strangest path to this because I was an ER doctor for 18 years and then got into it 15 years ago. But and what I've loved about, I always tell people in the ER, you didn't know what was coming through the door, and it was adrenaline, and it was like, okay, stabilize, treat, you know, move on in a very, very fast pace. Real estate's like that. We have a saying in our office that you better have kerosene in your veins to work here, because it's not for the faint of heart. It's not get rich quick. I love that, whoever said that. It is a long-term commitment to the project and to relationships. Most important thing for us is relationships. Tracy, you hit that. You're going to do repeat business with people. These tenants become your partners. You better take good care of them. In fact, one of my highlights, we have a fairly large property management portfolio now. And our team that takes care of our tenants, I just absolutely love it when I hear from a tenant that, hey, these guys take care of me better than we've ever been taken care of before. And that's the culture we try to instill, is just, hey, it's hard to chase tenants and find the right fit and do the partnerships and do the transaction and get them in your space. Once they're there, you better hope that they're there for the long haul with you, because you take such good care of them. So great advice. That's really, really good. The next topic I'd like to hit on is I don't think anyone was really prepared for a pandemic. I know that's probably goes without saying, as a nation, as a state, as a county, as a city, as businesses, but just I don't think we saw this coming like it did. But I do think, you know, most of us have lived through the last recession that was deep and ugly. I know Tracy and Mike, we did some things during that time together, and it was deep and dark and ugly. In fact, I remember, Mike, we presented at a couple of symposiums on real estate during there, and it was the most somber crowd. It looked like a funeral, and everyone was just like in the fetal position, going, "What are we going to do?" It was awful. It was just awful. And then the rebound was incredible. It was more than I thought it would be. So we've kind of just lived through that in that 08, 09 time. And now we all were, I think most of us were like putting cash away and waiting for the next big hit. And okay, when's it coming? And it ended up being a pandemic. So a long background to a quick question, which is just, if you were giving advice to someone out there that's either in real estate or wants to get in real estate, this recession, if you will, or challenge was different than the last, certainly. What have you learned? What would you do differently? And how would you prepare coming out of this one? Hopefully in 2021, we're going to bounce back and take off. But what have you learned through these? And what advice would you give folks listening? And let's go in that same order again.
I would just say that deals with good fundamentals will always, you just have to have good fundamentals. In the good times you can get out over your skis. You can do too much of speculative. And I think, so I was at the Boyer Company when the last recession happened. And during the good times of 2004, 2005, sometimes you'd be a little frustrated because they would want more on the deal than, other people were doing same deals with fewer tenants, signed, and it was a little frustrating. And then when things went difficult, Boyer was certainly impacted, but not as much as a lot of other developers because they didn't get too far away from fundamentals. So I think that's right now there's a building in Meridian, a suburban office building. They filled up one perfectly. They built the exact same building. It is fully empty, and they didn't do it with any leases in place. And so I look at that and just say, deals with good fundamentals, you'll always find a way out. Even if it's not a home run, you'll be able to find a way out. But getting a little too aggressive is a lot of times will cost you.
I felt like, leading up to the pandemic, no one was prepared for a health crisis. But I remember in February going to a big convention and everyone was just waiting, like, when is the next correction going to happen? I felt like there was a sense in the real estate community that it's been too good to be true for too long. And I know, our company, we were trying to, have cash reserves. And I felt like the smart developers who had lived through the past, recession knew what to do. And, just trying not to be over leveraged and, lessons learned from the last, recession. But I think something that's important is that Mike said is, if you have a good business strategy, like, stick to it. You don't have to follow every trend that happens with, real estate. Stick to what you know, and that will get you through the storm. And also, be conservative.
All of that is very good advice. Going through the first transaction, the recession 10, 12 years ago, a lot of people are laid off. People are a lot lean. They didn't have as much reserves. Hopefully we've learned a little bit. The company I'm with, mirror what everybody else said. Everybody's kind of thinking the hill, we're going to go back down the hill and might have a little bit of a drop. So everybody that I'm aware of and people that I've talked to, they had more reserves and they were more prepared. This time's different though. Back in 08, there was a high inventory out there. We have no inventory at this time. So I think we had more of a safety net because there wasn't a place for anybody to go. People are still moving in. One thing that we've learned also, we had a lot more staff in 08. A lot of people got laid off. I think companies have been running leaner and meaner still. Not as many people that I'm aware of in the real estate industry have been laid off. We're still working. And I think you have to trust your staff and you have to put your faith in your staff, even when we're working from home. At first, I know the higher ups, the executives are always going, how do we know our staff's doing the work when they're at home? Well, 1 or 2 days, you're not going to realize that, but 2 to 3 weeks down the road, you're going to know who's doing the work and who's not doing the work. And when you realize, like the company I'm with, everybody was getting their work done. Everybody's relying on everybody else. Everything's still going forward, and you're trusting each other. And you have to rely on your staff. You have to have a good staff in place.
And I think that was fantastic. It's great to hear that. I would add one thing to it. This time, what we did is, as soon as the pandemic hit, we had a meeting with all of our key players, and we said, hey, we're going to do our best to not lay people off and maintain what we have. But what I told them is, I wish that someone would have told me last time to go harder once it hits, because you're going to come out the other side, and it's almost like a blessing in disguise when you have these downturns. And I challenged everyone in our office. I want you to go innovate. I want you to think how we do things better, stronger, faster out of this. And we spent probably the first 3 or 4 months when everyone was locked down having continual discussions about process improvements, innovation. What are we going to do differently? And I promise you, we're coming out of this thing far better off than we went into it, because we took advantage of that time. So I think those are the lessons you learn when you go through these is hey, how would you do it differently next time? And that's certainly what we did. I'm going to take a couple. There's 3 questions that have come in from the audience, and I'll just kind of take these in the order that they came in. As we look at the time we have, someone asked with Crush the Curve. We started Crush the Curve Idaho last spring with a bunch of business leaders here in Idaho to help with testing. And what do I think of the pandemic? Listen, I spend probably 3 or 4 hours a day with Crush the Curve still. In fact, all morning, that's what I've been on, was calls of trying to help school districts. We figured out a way to try to help some of the nursing homes and assisted livings in Idaho. And actually, I'm really proud of Crush the Curve. We're actually helping the state of Texas, the state of Tennessee. We're just started today helping the state of North Dakota with their approach to the pandemic. And we have a little staff of 8. It's a nonprofit, but we're doing some good things. But I am not optimistic, guys. I think we're in for some really bad times. Now it will be short-term pain because there is a vaccine coming, but I wish we would have prepared more for the fall. I don't think we're prepared. I don't think we're prepared with prevention, and I don't think we're prepared with the strategies and testing we needed in place to try to minimize the impact. But I also am very optimistic because as an ER physician, I remember the H1N1 days when we had tents at the hospital at the ER. I was an ER doctor and we shut things down, and these things do pass. And as bad as it's going to get in the coming months, there is going to be a vaccine and we're going to get through this. But I would just tell people to be very careful. You don't want to get this thing. Last week, our attorney that for 15 years got it, was deathly ill. One of my best friends, 36-year-old son-in-law, just got discharged from the hospital and off a ventilator last week with it. It's not the flu. And so just be careful. Do the best you can in your community to get people to comply with masks, social distancing, early testing, and isolation. But I think we're in for it. So there's that. I don't know if anyone else has any answers or thoughts on that. Okay. The next one is, I think, a really interesting question. It is, would you justify any investment in real estate in the next few quarters of 2021? And I'll let you each kind of talk on that.
It's tough to say. It is a seller's market right now, and so it gets tougher and tougher as cap rates dip, and there's a lot of money out there that's looking for somewhere to make some return. So it's a tough market right now. It all depends on what your return threshold is, and but yeah, I do find it a lot of people are hoping for a day when things will be a little more affordable. It's expensive right now.
Well, from a developer's perspective, it's a great opportunity. Land is more expensive, but by the time you get, if you find the property, it takes you 6 to 9 months of due diligence, 6 months construction cycle. You're looking at the end of next year. It is hard times right now, but like Tommy was talking about, we need to innovate and look to the future. We're hoping that we get a vaccine sometime next spring to summer to be able to. So this is the time that people that are looking for expansion, this is a great time to be doing it, because you're going to be hitting the ground running when everybody's going to be starting to get more optimistic. So from a developer's perspective, I think it's a great period of time.
I would just say, use your relationships. I think, there's always a good opportunity for investing in real estate, but I would just have your close relationships and your, trusted allies close to you who can help you vet the deals. It's a time where you should be seeking advice from everyone. Maybe just don't go on your gut, because it is an emotional time, and it's an emotional time for investment. So I would just seek those peers.
Thank you. I think we've said it several times. I think you've said it several times, Mike. Fundamentals. You have to have that discipline on a pro forma. You got to have that discipline of what your returns are going to be, and make sure you're not getting emotional about a deal. You can do things in life for pride of ownership, and you might own it, but we try to do things for profitability, and we have that in our mission and vision statement, that we're profitable on projects, and we track that closely. But I think great advice. Be careful, but we're bullish. We had a strategy session last week as a company, and our next year will be, we're all in. We're all into the Intermountain West. We're all into Boise. I think things will continue to recover, and this is just a great industry. I think we're close to wrapping up. I'll ask our hosts, this is a great question. Natasha, I'm glad they just reminded me. It came in from the audience, but hospitality. We breezed right by that, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that industry. Now, my partner, Courtney Lydiard with Ball Ventures, has a large hospitality portfolio. I know Tracy has some. I'm a part owner in the hotel, the Hilton Garden Inn in Boise. It has been hit hard. And I would love to hear your thoughts on the recovery and what you're seeing currently.
So I'll try to be quick, and I'll say from a bank standpoint, PEG has a big hospitality. Well, we have a number of hotels in our portfolio, and we also have some extended stays that we're converting. So we're having issues with financing and banks. They don't want to touch hospitality. So we've had to be creative on the financing and raising equity. So, we can't rely on banks when it comes to our hospitality. When the pandemic hit, we saw our vacancy just plummeted, and we were hit hard, in March and April. But this is where, we felt like this is where we had to sharpen our tools and become more efficient, and we had to cut costs. So if you've traveled in the past couple of months, you'll see that hotels have changed their practices. They're not cleaning rooms every day. They're cleaning common areas. There's new standards, hospital grade standards. So we feel like as a developer, what we've learned from hospitality, which we think will translate to office and all of our other developments, is we have to communicate a safe environment. We need people and our tenants and customers to feel safe. So doing that is communicating to them, the extra effort we're, going and to provide, that experience for them, because we have a lot of hotels that actually did well during the pandemic. So our hotels in big cities, that are based on like travel and conventions, those have been shut down. The NBA being shut down, our hotels in Salt Lake really struggled, but our hotels, down in southern Utah, for staycations, our hotel in Boise actually was doing very well because, people just they were driving to different national parks and, just trying to get out from their home, just 2 hours away. So some of our hotels actually did well. Now, those hotels we anticipate will take a big dip in Q4. So we, built up our cash reserves in summer. But, hospitality is hit and hospitality can shut down, but we aren't building any new hotels. We've kind of stopped, but we are buoying up our current ones. And we feel like we've done a good job with our current assets, and it's just forced us to become way more efficient in cutting our costs, and it's helped limit our layoffs.
That's great. Thank you so much, Natasha. I think we'll end there. I want to thank our panelists today. It's very nice to see you all, first of all, and be together. Hopefully, those listening were able to get something out of this, and appreciate the time that they spent tuning in. I know I speak for all the panelists. We're thankful for the University of Utah. Spent a lot of time there, and actually, my son and daughter-in-law just graduated from the Business Scholars Program 2 years ago there, and an amazing program, and just thankful for what it means to me in my life. And it's nice to be a proud alumni of the university, and it means a lot to me personally. I know I'm speaking for Mike and Natasha and Tracy. So thank you very much, panelists, for being here, and thank you to those who join us. And I'm going to turn it back over to Langsha now.
Thank you all so much. That panel was fantastic, and it was just such an interesting discussion. Tommy, thank you so much for moderating. We are just honored to have you all in the Eccles community, and just want to thank you all so much. Thank you to those who tuned in live. We appreciate you continuing to follow along with the Eccles Alumni Road Trip, and are just so appreciative of everything that you all do for the David Eccles School of Business. We want to make sure that you guys have this resource. If you are interested in furthering your career in the real estate industry, or want to know more, maybe want to take it to the next step, we'd encourage you to check out the Eccles School Master of Real Estate Development program. We have some incredible faculty and staff involved, and you can learn more at eccles.link/mred. Of course, we hope you will tune in next week. We'll be talking about global empathetic leadership, which is a topic that I think everybody, no matter what kind of level you are at in your career, no matter what industry, can take something away from this topic. So tune in from 12 to 1 Eastern time next Thursday, November 19th. As always, thank you so much to our generous sponsor, CR England. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday and a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much, and go Ute.